Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm the managing partner here at Lingia Law. And today, together with one of my associates, Allison Powell, we're going to talk about USP 797 and what that means for healthcare practices, dental practices, IV hydration practices, and all types of different practices. So I've been practicing law for a really long time. Together, we've helped hundreds of med spa and IV hydration businesses here at Lingia. And we wanted to make this video because we're getting a lot of questions about this topic. And between our experiences, we know the answers to most of them and wanted to put them on this video to make it simpler for our clients. And if you guys have any other questions, just reach out to us and we're happy to help you. So Allison, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So as Sarah said, my name is Allison Powell, and I'm one of the associates that works at Lingia. I began working at Lingia as a law clerk, and then when I passed the bar, I came on as an associate. So it's been a really fun experience to be here and kind of watch this industry grow. At the same time I graduated with my law degree, I also graduated with my master's of business administration. So I love advising all these healthcare practices and medical spas about the business side of things as well as the legal side of things. But that's enough about me. So we're going to get started and tell you about what you came here to hear today. So Sarah?
Okay. So Allison, what is USP 797 and what do people need to know about it?
So USP stands for the United States Pharmacopoeia. So the USP is a not-for-profit, science-driven organization that puts out a lot of healthcare standards using a team of experts. And a lot of states require compliance with these standards. So the USP Compounding Expert Committee is responsible for putting together USP 797, the standards that we're here to talk about. So Sarah, why don't you explain a little bit more about how many states require USP compliance?
Yeah, so over 32 states require USP 797 compliance, and some states are even more strict than these guidelines that we're going to talk about today.
Yes, for instance, California is one of those states. They have additional restrictions on who can compound, as well as what's needed in your policies and procedures for compounding. So aside from this broad overview, it's also really important to be aware of your state-specific requirements, which we can help you with. But before we get too into the details, let's take a step back. Sarah, what exactly is compounding?
Great question. And a lot of people think that compounding is just something that maybe happens in the hospital or something that pharmacies do or really specialist physicians do. But compounding is really the mixing of medications together. And it's the mixing of medications, whether that happens in a hospital, in somebody's house, in your med spa, in your van, wherever you're mixing medications, that's compounding. And the reason for compounding is because some drugs don't really exist as that particular type of mix, so it has to be made. And sometimes there's a shortage of the brand name drug, and a lot of us listening here today will know what I'm referring to. But this video is not about that. This video is about USP 797. And a lot of times when medications come as like a powder or in a little vial, you can't just take that vial and inject it into someone. You have to mix it with a bunch of other things in order to really make it work. And compounding is also that.
Yes. So Chapter 797 actually gives us a formal definition of compounding, which is combining, admixing, diluting, pooling, reconstituting, repackaging, or otherwise altering a drug product or bulk drug substance to create a sterile medication. It's really important to note that it's not compounding if you're just following the manufacturer's approved labeling to reconstitute a drug. It's only if you're mixing your own to create something new. So Sarah, when would 797 apply?
So 797 applies whenever somebody mixes any sterile preparation and in any place that that's done. Again, whether that's being done at your kitchen table or whether it's being done in your med spa, in a pharmacy, in a hospital. And like Allison said, it doesn't apply, for example, if you're exactly following the manufacturer's instructions and just reconstituting something. So for example, if you ordered a vial of Botox, you're reconstituting it exactly like you're supposed to, that's not compounding. But let's say you ordered a vial of Sculptra and you added whatever you're supposed to add to it, bacteriostatic water, for example. But then on top of it, you added epinephrine. And on top of that, you added lidocaine. Okay, you're definitely compounding then, and you have to make sure you're following the guidelines here. So now that we've covered a lot of this background information, let's talk about why we're talking about this regulation USP 797 now. Allison, why don't you take this one?
So the USP recently revised Chapter 797. So we were working off the 2008 version, and now effective November 1st, 2023, they've made updated changes that all of the people that are compounding, which like Sarah said, is a lot of these people in healthcare, you are compounding. If you didn't realize that's what you're doing, you now have to comply with USP 797 and these new changes that maybe you weren't complying with before. So one of these specific compounding regulations is immediate use compounds. Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about immediate use compounds?
So immediate use is one of the really big changes, that the definition of this is what's changing in this USP 797. And what USP 797 is saying is that immediate use means 4 hours following the start of preparation. And what that actually means is, let's say you ordered some stuff and it arrived to your clinic and you opened it and you started mixing it. You have to use it within 4 hours of doing that. So what that means is you really shouldn't be mixing things well in advance if you did before. You should only be mixing if you're going to use them within 4 hours. Because if you don't comply with this immediate use guideline, we're going to go through a lot of other requirements you're going to have to comply with. So this immediate use thing is really key, that you use things within the 4 hours of you preparing them. And so about how many products can be in this immediate use bag? Like, for example, like what if I mix 10 different things and I use them within 4 hours? Can I do that?
So no, you're limited to 3 different sterile products. So for instance, for IV hydration, saline does count as one of these products. So you'd be limited to saline plus the 2 things that you're mixing with the bag to prepare the IV. This means that you really have to think about your recipes and the CSPs that you're preparing and make sure that you're not violating this, unless you want to, like Sarah said, get into all these other regulations that you have to comply with if you're not falling under immediate use. In addition to this 4 hours restriction and the restriction on products, there's some other changes that you need to be aware of too. Some of these are the SOPs and the documented staff training that's required. You were always required to incorporate aesthetic techniques, but now these techniques have to be incorporated into written COPs, and you need documented training of these techniques.
Wow. So in addition to having to use it within 4 hours, this limit of 3 different things, you also have to have written SOPs and staff training now. And that's different than what used to happen before, right?
Yes. So before SOPs, their SOP requirement was silent. So even though that was best practice, it wasn't necessarily mandated. Now it's being mandated that you have to have these written SOPs and that you also have to have documented staff training. So this documented staff training requires that all personnel are trained to demonstrate competency in the assigned tasks and with the facility's SOPs. So the training actually, they kind of go hand in hand. The training is incorporated into the SOPs, and your training has to show that you're following the SOPs. And the training means you need written instruction, and then you also need to be hands-on and actually watch your staff demonstrate that they can perform the procedure or the compound that they're compounding. Training should be done at least annually for low and medium risk preparations and semi-annually for high risk compounding. And of course, you can never have too much training. So if you want to be really, really thorough, you could always do more than that. But that's just the bare minimum kind of best practice standards.
Got it. And what's interesting is even if you're a single person shop, you still have to have the training and the SOPs. So there's no exception for a solo entrepreneur or anything like that. You, even if you're one person, need to have these SOPs and training.
Yep, they always say solo entrepreneurs wear a lot of hats. So in this case, you're the trainer and the trainee. You need both. So, and some of the, oh, go ahead, Sarah.
No, that's okay. What about like SOPs? What's required to be in those?
So the SOP should ensure, like I mentioned, that aseptic processes are followed and that all possible contamination is being minimized. And then they should also include your scope for immediate use compounding, the training requirements, the appropriate selection of components, what the bud is, any labeling requirements. It's really good to develop specific SOP for immediate use compounding, even if you're doing other types of compounding in your practice. It's like I said, putting these together can be a little bit overwhelming, so it's okay to seek outside help. That's part of why we're doing this video, because we want to help you with things like this. So the revised standards also address using evidence-based information for determining compatibility of drugs that are compounded, single dose containers, what's needed to document compounding. And then there was some requirements that didn't change from the 2008 version that you're still required to comply with, which include your labeling requirements, the requirement for using sterile components, and also the requirement to discard unused compounded products when they're beyond their best buy or beyond use date.
Yep. And another thing that's still the same that hasn't changed is if it's a single use container, you could only use that single use container for one patient. You can't be splitting the containers among, or single use vials among multiple patients. That would violate this. So there's a lot here. And if you don't comply with this, so if you don't do things for immediate use, if you don't comply with the ingredient requirements, what happens is you have to have a very expensive hood and room. And it's not just about you buy a $2,000 or $3,000 hood on the internet, you put it in and you're good. You're talking about probably $25,000 or more in building out a special room with very specific processes and what you need to do. And even then, you're not just done building out this room, it comes with a whole big set of compliance. So it's really important to stay within the immediate use and this ingredient rule that we talked about.
Yes, so like Sarah was saying, if you don't stay within this, then you're put into a category 1, 2, or 3, and it's based on the environment, the level of garbing that's needed. It's based on what bud assignment is needed, best beyond use date that's needed. And then even when you get where you need to be, you have to keep up with either like semi-annual or annual check-ins and permitting, and it just gets to be really complicated, which if that's where you are in practice, that's great. And you can comply with these things, and they're there to protect everyone. So they're not there to make your life difficult. They're there to protect the public and then also yourself from some type of malpractice claim. But you definitely want to make sure that what you're doing is either immediate use or you're set up correctly for category 1, 2, or 3 compounding. And if you want any further clarification on any of this, we offer complimentary consults with our firm if you're a first-time client, or if you're already a client, we'd love to schedule a meeting with you and talk through some of this. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
No, I think this was a good summary of the overview. The state-specific issues we could go over with you once you do the consult with us. Like we mentioned, some states are even more strict than this, but this should be the baseline that you follow. And if you have any other questions, we'd love to hear from you. And if you need help writing the SOPs to be compliant with this, which are mandatory now, we can certainly help you and schedule a consultation with us, and we'd love to help. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi.